As Kevin said, I work at a media agency, but advertising is a little bit wanky, so we call it a connections agency. Very new world. And I guess what we do is, in the old world, what we did was advise clients on where to spend their money. Yeah, put X percentage of your budget in TV, X percentage in outdoor. But more and more, media companies are changing and they're evolving because they have to. The truth of the matter is, I'm not going to talk about this for too long, don't worry, is that it's getting tougher and tougher to make money in media. So a number of years ago, things really started to evolve, and strategy and communications strategy in particular became a bigger part of media agencies, and that's what I do. Essentially, I just do comm strategy. So, I advise clients on how to spend their money, in which channels to spend their money, who they should spend that money talking to, and what it is that those people care about, and then what that message should be as well. So, I have a pretty fun job. Coca Cola is one of my clients. They're pretty involved client. Spent a lot of time at Coca Cola. And this campaign case study that I'll take you through today was not from last summer, it was from the summer before. And it really just shows how, what I'm going to be talking about is how we approached a business problem. I think that's another thing that we're trying to do more and more of, is not just become a kind of agency partner. Don't worry, you haven't missed anything. On the first slide still. Not just be, a vendor for a client, but how you can actually become a business partner. Because the closer you get to their business and the more they're coming to you as a consultant, not just somebody that kind of does their media, the better it is for the relationship. So what you'll see today is that they came to us with a real business problem. Bloody tough one, let me tell you. And what we did was get under the skin of that business problem, look at what's the problem behind the problem. And I don't think people do that enough. I think particularly with marketing strategy, what people tend to do is either identify the problem and think that that's enough to solve it, or identify the problem behind the problem and then think that's the insight. But what you really need when you're coming up with marketing solutions is two sets of insights. The problem behind the problem, and then another consumer insight for how you solve that problem. And you'll see how we've done that today. Any idea what Coke's problem might have been? Yeah, sugar. Yeah, essentially a massive decline in sales. So this was at September 2014. 64% of teens hadn't had a Coke in the past 4 weeks. And that's how some of these companies measure sales stupidly, if you ask me. Coke does it past 4 weeks. So every 4 weeks, they're always, not every 4 weeks, every day they're getting past 4 week data on different audience segments. So this was particularly for teens, right? The next generation of potential Coke drinkers. And a pretty steady decline over a number of years, but really starting to come down. I think, someone said sugar, massive issue. And, health is a huge cultural concern and something that Coke takes very seriously. I don't know if you read Daily Telegraph or any kind of news outlet or the SMH, almost daily there is a story about health, and almost daily that story, health or sugar, almost daily that story has a picture of Coca-Cola as the lead image, and that's a massive business problem for them. They are the poster child of sugar consumption in Australia, and you say, so they should be. Well, that's a different discussion. But I think when you're looking at business problems like this and you say the reality is, sugar's a problem. Yep, okay, but that's only one problem. And we can't do a lot about that right now. McDonald's, they had their own health problems. What do? They change their menu. Great, we can't change the recipe for Coca-Cola. You can offer people other choices, just like McDonald's did. You can offer them salads. We can't do that, they did. We offered people Life, Coca-Cola Life, so a naturally sweetened drink. You can offer people Diet or Zero. But at the end of the day, they're all just less healthier options for each other. So you have to approach the problem from a different way. And digging under it, there's more than just sugar that's the reason for this. There's a lot more than just sugar. And particularly for teens, what we found was that Coke was losing their cool. I know that sounds kind of simple, but what we have here is we used a tool really creatively named by my boss called the Cool Tool. And it's something that we use sometimes. This was actually conducted in a pitch. So this entire piece of work, well actually the first half of this piece of work, was done when we were pitching for Coca-Cola. So complete transparency about that. If you want to ask me any questions as we go, feel free to just shout out That was very quick reaction. Good job. Yeah.
Social responsibility issue that you're solving. Is that a problem for you to represent Coca-Cola as a company?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. I believe that people are empowered to make their own choices. I think in this case study in particular, sugar was kind of put to the side. What Coke is doing now, you know, that they can't do all their comms around telling people to drink their products responsibly, but they are certainly taking steps to ensure that they are taking responsibility for the moderate consumption of their products. Let me tell you, I've been talking to them for the last 6 months, you know, going down to stuff around changing their business model, you know, taking care of shareholders. People think, oh, you know, they're a business, you know, they have to try and make money. So they're not just trying to target, you know, the kids of today and sell them sugar. That they're a business that employs, you know, over 21,000 people in Australia. We're talking about farmers, supply chains to your local store owners. So there's a lot of people that are involved in the Coca-Cola business, and it's a very slow-moving machine. And when you work with any businesses that need to make changes, you'll find out things move very, very slowly, particularly when you're owned by somebody in the US who's making a lot of the decisions. So I won't talk about the sugar stuff too much today, but absolutely you have to think about it. You know, I've been asked to work on gambling clients. I refuse to work on gambling clients. We have some of them in our agency as well, some really big ones. There are things that I won't do, but you know, one of my favorite products in the world is KFC, and I actually used to work on KFC as well. I love fried chicken. Now, somebody asked me the same question when I worked on KFC, and absolutely not. You know, it's people's responsibility to take responsibility for their own consumption in my point of view. I think in countries like, in continents like South America, it's a little bit of a different issue where, you know, people don't have access to water and they're getting Coke cheaper than they are water. It's different. But in Australia, you know, people are empowered to make their own decisions, and, you know, I'm trying to help them to buy more Coca-Cola in this instance. So it's an interesting issue, but I think from our point of view, there are far more factors at play. But fair enough question. So Coke was losing its cool. There are a number of different elements of cool that we look at. And this is just how we define it. You know, different brands define it from different things, but my company defines it like this. There's energy and sociability. And you'll see when it's compared to some other really big teen brands like Vans or Apple or Nike, you know, it's pretty down. It's pretty bad. Stuff like caring for others, actually not doing too bad of a job on. Understated achievement, not really something Coke's after, but it is an element of cool that some brands use. And self-belief and confidence also pretty down. But the number one thing there around defying convention is where they were really losing. And that was something that we were able to pinpoint. And we knew if we could move that, we could start to move the dial against teens in this market. So you can see here, you know, Nike, Apple and Vans absolutely smashing it on this one metric, and then Coke's all the way back here. So when you think about it, the ubiquity of Coke, which is something that every marketer would love. Yeah, every business would love to be everywhere, would love to have their product in everybody's hands, and would love to be seen everywhere. You know, most marketers come to me with the challenge around awareness. Coke doesn't have that. In fact, Coke is everywhere, and it's always the same. And it's always red. So actually their ubiquity is working against them, which was something that, you know, is hard for a marketer or a client to grasp, is that, you know, we've got this massive machine that's at work. How can that actually be working against us? Well, when you're talking to an audience like teens, you know, Coke has become the drink that their mum buys for them on special occasions, in this case. So their challenge was really, how do we turn that around? And how do we make teens feel like Coke is talking just to them? How do we make teens feel like Coke is making them feel special and speaking in their language? Because we hadn't. And you know, you go back and you look at the data, we were doing campaigns for all people, just kind of big TV campaigns that, because, you know, Coke is everywhere, the marketers say, well, we need to be everywhere as well. But when you do that, you speak to everyone, but you actually speak to no one. So really going back and focusing, putting the consumer first, and, you know, trying to find the problem behind the problem. And the other thing in marketing is there's heaps of problems. There's always different ways into different problems, but what you're trying to find is the one that you can control. And like I mentioned before, in this instance, this was the one that we can control. We could use marketing and communications to make teens make teens feel like we were speaking, especially to them. So we did some more research. We went out and we looked at those other brands that were really cool that teens were loving, and we said, what are they doing? Well, Vans is using colour, Apple was using colour, and Nike was using colour. Why were they doing that? It's because teens use colour as a form of self-expression. You know, think back to when you were a teen. Sure, it wasn't too long ago. It's not a great time in your life. You know, it's fun, you're learning lots of things, but there's very few ways that you can express yourself. You don't have a lot of money. Usually you're wearing a school uniform, and colour is one of the ways that you talk to people about your individuality. And that was what we found. And when you put that in reference to our business problem, that Coke was just always the same and always red, you begin to see where we can go with this idea. So our strategy was kind of simple. It was use colour to help teams express themselves and to excite them about the brand again. And really, you know, excite ourselves about the brand again as well. So we came up with an idea called Colour Your Summer. Did anyone see this campaign? Looked like this. Looked like that. Anyone see it? Not teens, so you may not have. This is not an easy idea to get through. I will say that up front. So in the pitching process, we came with this idea. We even mocked up some cans, you know, get the clients excited. They had the regional CMO in the room, so pretty, you know, a big dog in the Coke world. And he said no. In the middle of the presentation, he stopped the flow and he said, I'm just going to stop you there. That's not going to happen. We are not going to change the colour of our cans. You know, we're an icon. Why would you do that? It's all, we are red. You know, why would you do that? And we showed him some research from teens, which I've got in a little bit, which hopefully the sound won't work, but I'll just mime it for you or something. We showed him some research. We'd actually gone out and talked to teens about it. And when he saw their faces and he saw the reaction that they had, you know, he just really couldn't argue with it. But it's a massive step to try and get a client like Coke, who's, you know, all-seeing, all-powerful, to try and change something that is really fundamental to their brand. But, you know, if they hadn't done it, they wouldn't have had the success off the back end of it. So I guess the thing I'm trying to say there is expect to hear no a few times when you come up with big, scary ideas, but don't take no, because, you know, it's those big ideas that are ones that are going to make the big difference. Yeah.
Did you find that having limited edition had under?
Yeah, look, there's a bit of a backstory with that. So limited edition does help. This was part of, so these smaller cans were something that they had committed to globally. So back to the sugar conversation, you know, they said we want to launch smaller can options so that people, you know, don't have to drink the 600ml or don't have to drink the big 330ml cans. So they had said to us as part of the brief, not just, hey, can you help us because we've got declining sales, was we want to launch these smaller cans. How can we do that in a fun, interesting way? And the smaller cans had a fixed price. So they actually printed the price on the can, which is massive for Coca-Cola because it takes away the power from the retailer. That was limited edition as well. You can't do that forever, otherwise the distributors get angry. So I think the actual size was fun, and I think that spoke to teens as well. You know, it was part of their global commitment to reduce consumption. You know, again, they get sprayed for it because you come out with smaller cans and people say, oh, you're charging me more for less. So that's every business model in the world does that, but, you know, it's Coca-Cola, so you get used to it. So we changed the colour of an icon. This was a massive deal, you know, something that Coke looks at a lot, and I would implore you guys to think about. And our entire business, actually, the company I work for, has now remodeled the way we think about planning media around this, and it's called OESP. So it's looking at your owned assets first and looking at how you can use them as one of your biggest marketing channels. So not just getting lazy and going, yeah, we'll do an ad or we'll do a print or we'll do whatever. You know, what do we have at our disposal? And for Coke, ever since the Share a Coke campaign, it has been the cans. It's been your packaging. You know, for a brand, like we said, that is everywhere, this is the biggest awareness driver that we could have. So to do something with your can, not only do you do something really exciting at point of sale. So when people are used to walking past a red wall or walking up to a fridge that is always the same, all of a sudden they're seeing colour, they're seeing something different. So you've got their attention immediately. But you know, it's everywhere. The product is everywhere. So we always start with owned. We then go to earned. So how do we use our owned assets to create earned media, earned conversation? Then we look at shared. So shared is in relation to our partnerships. So, you know, a Hoyt's, Coke served in all cinemas. So Hoyts is a partnership, McDonald's, our actual customers, our retailers, those kind of things are shared. And then we go to paid at the end of it. Okay, how do we use paid to distribute and spread this idea? And you'll see later when we go through the ecosystem for this campaign, another one of their rules. So they call these things connections principles. One is OESP. The second is 70-20-10. Has anyone ever heard of that? So 70-20-10 refers to percentages of their budget. They like to spend 70% of their budget doing things that they're familiar and comfortable with, 20% of their budget with something that is innovative, and 10% of their budget with something that is completely new, that is just a test. So that's a real commitment from a brand to say that every campaign, every dollar I spend, 10% is going to be about something new, trying to find the next interesting thing. That then moves to the 20, which then moves to the 70 as you go across the different periods. Another one is no dead ends. We'll talk about that in a little while, but we shall crack on. This was not enough. So this is the thing that I think is really important. You'll see we've used insight and research to uncover the problem behind the problem. We've gone back to the consumer and said, okay, they love colour, let's put colour on the cans. Great idea, but that's not enough. This is really just a, hey, look at me, I'll get a little bit of notice, but you're not going to actually get someone to love your brand by doing this. You need to go more, you need to go deeper, you need to have a true value exchange. So what? We had to go back to the drawing board. That was the idea we pitched in the pitch, was the coloured cans. They said, okay, that's nice, but what's the engagement? How do we get teens to participate with this idea? So we went back to research, as you always do. Now, this is something hopefully none of you would know about this campaign because none of you are teens. Each combination of those coloured 6 cans is actually a readable code. So a code that unlocks stuff for teens. So if you went up to any of our real world advertising, and it had all our advertising was very simple for this, it was just 6 cans, that was it. If you paused the video online and the ad and snapped it, if you got actually 6 cans, if you bought them and put them in different combinations, they formed codes. So why codes? Well, we went and spoke to teens again, we did some more research, and what we found was that teens love to disappear into a world within a world, right? And that kind of sounds a little bit marketing, but it's true. They have their own culture, their own celebrities within this world, their own language. I don't know if anyone's talked to a teen recently, but the more you talk to them, the more you find out you have absolutely no idea about them. Anyone heard of someone called Troye Sivan? I hadn't heard of him either until he asked me for $1 million to do a Facebook post for them. There is huge stars that we have just no idea who they are. Language as well, lots of kind of, WTFs and stuff like that. So you've got their own culture, their own stars, their own communications channels, and it's fueled by the digital world, clearly, and they like to escape into this world. So what Coke wanted to do was fill this world or create a new world for them to discover, full of colour. And you'll see how they did that. So these cans were actually readable codes. How do you access this world? Well, you search Colour Your Summer, which was a hashtag. So this was something really kind of innovative and awesome that we were able to do. We created our own world-first mobile image recognition technology. So some of you may be familiar with image recognition technology. It's pretty simple. You use your phone, take a picture of something, it recognises it. Google search can do it, right? But you need an app to do it on a mobile phone because it's pretty heavy stuff. For the first time ever, we did it without an app. Coke doesn't believe in creating apps and then investing in people downloading them, and a lot of brands do that. It's not something that we believe in doing. It's a waste of money. We have apps approaching us all the time. Absolutely happy to hear what they have to say, but usually they want us to pay for people to download their app for them, and we're not in the business of that because that's a lot of stoppages to try and get someone to download an app. So to do it without an app was really important for us. We created a mobile site, which was, again, for the first time, you could just type in the hashtag into the address bar and that would take you directly to the site. So, another interesting piece of technology that we used. And then it pulled up a camera and encouraged you to snap, as I said, either print out and out of, we did a lot of out of home. We didn't do any TV for the first time ever, which was huge. Talk about that later. Snap an out of home ad, or buy 6 cans and snap as many combinations of the codes as you wanted to. That would then unlock colourful experiences, which I'll go into what that was, and you could share those experiences to your social network. So you can see what we've done is tie what is essentially a package promotion into an engagement idea. And in doing so, we put the product at the heart of that idea. Putting the product at the heart of it involves transaction. And that really is what drives the sales in this campaign. So to be able to access the world, yes, you could do it through advertising, but what we found most engagement was through the actual product itself and driving people to purchase. So what did they get? I'll talk about that in a second. The interesting thing was really trying to stick to this world within a world. And again, you know, the insight told us that once parents were in, kids were out. So what we had to do was make sure that there was the real world advertising. So when parents saw this stuff, out of home, film, digital panels, tactical opportunities, teens saw their own world, which was games, content, experiences, and prizes. And what those actually were was 70 pieces of original content. So 70 pieces of content is a huge amount of content for one brand to create for one campaign. We were able to use global assets for this and repurpose them. So they had some really fun, kind of short, sharp, global videos. If you look at them, they're really weird, they're colourful, they're odd. You know, even looking at that content, you think, why is that entertaining? But it's something that really works for teens. And the fact that we had a huge myriad kind of library to choose from kept people coming back and re-engaging. They could share that content. We had 125 mobile games. So if you're a bored teen at a bus stop, you see one of our ads, snap it, takes you directly through to a free mobile game that you can play with your friends, 125 different ones of them. We also had instant prizes. Another insight about teens, they love free shit. Absolutely. Give them free shit. So really, really colourful big towels, you know, stuff, stuff that links back to summer and trying to make teens summer come alive with colour. And money can't buy experiences. So, you know, I'll talk a little bit more about these in a minute, but the other side of this is using influencer marketing to really get our message out there, and all of the experiences were tied to the different influencers that we used. Any questions around the actual mechanic itself? We tried to make it as simple as possible. I think, you know, just talking to you realistically, when you go through these things, ideas sound simple to begin with, and then you go to implement them and they become very difficult. And, you know, we really had to push ourselves to minimize these steps as much as possible, keeping it to search, snap, win, and then share was most important. And, you know, working with the tech guys super closely, that's the other thing, that in the background of this, there's us working with a creative agency, working with a tech agency in New Zealand, all trying to get this one experience happening really fluidly. So, you know, it's not an easy thing to do, but once you've got it, gee, you can see that the effort that you put in keeping it simplified really pays off when it comes to the engagement that we saw. Yeah.
Testing did they do on, like, you know, you go and you buy your cans, you buy your cans, and then you kind of put them in a pyramid, and then you take a photo and nothing happens, or like, that kind of, absolutely
had to be super careful. Really, really careful, which is why colour actually works so well. So image recognition technology it's pretty good, but to have it work in a mobile site, it had to be fairly straightforward. So, you know, the size of the cans was important. Do we guide people in the snapping process? What we found was that with teens, they're way smarter than we give them credit for. You know, they're uber consumers, if you will. So they know the system, they know how things work, they won't give up, they're very digitally minded. So if we kept it simple and we just kept it to horizontal cans, on the site there was an explanation, but we didn't lead with the explanation. I think that was the important thing. You know, the clients wanted us to put on every single poster, search hashtag colour your summer to engage with a world full of colour and snap, blah, blah. None of that happened. We kept it a secret. You know, to go to a client to say, keep the thing that we're investing most of our money into a secret is super tough. And we can say it, but, you know, all power to them for being brave enough to do it, because keeping it a secret was the thing that fueled it. Because it made teens feel like it was especially for them. They told each other about it. We didn't have to go and shout it from the rooftops. So, you know, a lot of testing did happen. You know, probably in terms of time, 3 months worth of testing on that technology. You know, the guys had a similar technology. They evolved it for this. But yeah, just keeping it really simple to shapes and colours was what made it happen really quickly. You know, you still have complaints about people not being able to do things, but you find when you get a simple mechanic like that, people actually try and game the system, so you get more engagement than you would less. And that was really important for us, is to make sure that people kept coming back and re-engaging. And we saw an average of 4 engagements per person as well. So that was pretty exciting for us. 70% of teen consumption actually happens in the household, and it's bought for them by their parents. So this was before we had that information actually. Now our campaigns, you'll see, are a little bit more balanced, talking to teens and main grocery buyers. But all segments have their own problems. Teens was the one that had the biggest problem. And traditionally, Coke is a very youthful brand, and the global strategy was really about re-engaging teens for the next generation. You know, and they go through the whole category in different ways. So, you know, some drinks, some soft drinks within the category target the younger end of teens, some target the middle, some target the older, and you kind of fall out and you grow out of different drinks. Coke is something that, you know, people don't really grow out of. It's not like a Fanta. You kind of drink when you're a little bit younger. So, you know, teens is a focus because, one, they're a really influential segment for higher and lower, but obviously there's a lot of them, and it was the one that was most critically going down, so the one that they wanted to address foremostly. So this was one of the things that we showed them. This was just, when we came up with the idea, we got a bunch of teens in, kind of really lo-fi, just to test it, to see what they thought. The sound isn't going to work because my computer cable is on the other side of my computer, apologies. But you'll just see from their reactions and their faces, when we showed them the idea that they could actually, you know, play with this system and have a little fun and discover that world within a world, they, come on. Click to play. Let's try this one.
So you can kind of team up and make that is just like around.
I would just go and find as many cans as I can and make as many like different kind of like positions and try and unlock as much as I can.
That's fresh.
I'd probably go to every bus stop.
Yeah.
Because they're only like, what, 50 meters?
At North Sydney, you have a bus stop every like 50 metres.
I'd just go running. Like, I'd get like a 6 running gear.
So you can see they get really excited about things that you might not think they're excited about. But gaming the system is something that they love because it feels like they're empowered and they have control at a very disempowered time of their life. I just thought I'd show you some stuff like this. This is in Melbourne. Yeah, local. So, you know, really fun stuff like this was part of the kind of spreading of the idea, the connection strategy, if you will. You know, big disruptive formats that really showed off the colour of the campaign. You know, even that was snappable, and you could win from that, which is kind of fun. But we didn't just do big stuff. I think, you know, the most important thing here, for the first time in over a decade, Coke didn't use TV for their summer campaign. Again, massive business case to be made. When you become, it's like a drug, TV. Clients get really, really addicted to it, and if you don't have it on the plan, they get super nervous, particularly when you've got really aggressive sales targets. So we convinced them that young people are moving away from TV. Why would we go there? You know, it's only costing more and more money to try and reach the same level as audience that we used to. You know, not only fragmentation of the channels, but just people moving away from the TV screen itself. So we convinced them not to do any TV, which was massive for us. And most of our kind of awareness stuff, but secret awareness really of this metric, was done through influencers. So all of the codes, as I said, we didn't talk about it all in any above the line activity. We only did it with influencers and through social word of mouth and social media, which is pretty exciting for us. People telling each other about it, sharing that content, sharing those games, talking to their friends and getting people involved. As I said, we used our owned assets. So, you know, your social media channels are obviously a massive owned asset for you if you've cultivated them. So we could do that. Earned, so we paid a couple of influencers, a few. This guy's Troy Sivan, he's the big one. We had a strategy where we went all music style influencers. So we actually brokered a partnership with Universal Music ourselves. And what we did was use those influencers to seed the message out there. So we sent them the cans before we sent anyone. We said, hey, you know, that's the other thing. We had something exciting to talk about because we had these cans. They were like, wow, we're the first person in the world to get the cans. And then we got them to tell their audiences that the cans were actually codes. And then, you know, one of the prizes that you could win was a one-on-one with your favorite influencer through their channel. You know, there was a private screening of a movie with one. We gave away a bunch of different experiences, you know, the kind of money can't buy experiences for teens that they really love, and then created content out of that again. And then there's obviously paid. You know, I think our biggest awareness driver in this campaign was out of home. There's an example of the out of home. You know, we did a bunch of out of home all around Australia. We tried to make it as fun and interactive as possible, so all the out of home was actually interactive and gameable through your mobile. And some of them we actually made, you know, digitally interactive, and we did the world's first kind of dispensing cans. So if you got the code right in the digital panel, it actually dispensed a cold can for you, which was pretty cool, pretty hard to restock as well.
So which segment can deliver the most value for owners?
Certainly from a value point of view, earned. G'day, how are you? Earned. From an ROI, I don't have the ROI off the top of my head, but this is a strategy that the year after we really brought to the heart of the campaign. So the campaign we did this year was we built all around influencers, showing that, you know, they are truly the stars of today when it comes to teens, online influencers, and we made them the entire campaign essentially this year, the summer that's just passed. So, and that's seen some great success as well. So I'd say this, I mean, obviously owned is pretty good ROI because you're not paying for it. But we think about owned as more than just your media channels own. Like, you know, how do you use fridges? We make a recommendation on the stickers they should put on their fridges, every single media recommendation. You know, how do you use point of sale? How are you using the frozen Coke cups? Everything that you can, really, we try and look at and try and maximize engagement. Paid, you know, it works as well. And you need that as well, right? You need to get awareness of the campaign. You need to tell a lot of people about it, but it's just about being smart. And you know, we're loving out of home. One of my favorite channels. I think this is probably the point I've made a couple of times, right? That using teens was actually our most influential media channel, our best media channel. The fact that we didn't openly say it and that we let them spread the word for us really turned out to be, you know, the best thing that we could have done. As I said, it's dangerous, it was risky, but it worked for us. Wholly confusing slide. This is really what my job is. I build these on a day-to-day basis. It used to be called bubble charts. I call them connections ecosystems now. So what you have at the heart of these is the ultimate action that you want people to take. Right? The ultimate action is that we want them to engage with the Colour Your Summer campaign through search, snap, and experience. They could do that online and through their mobile. Yep. And then you've got the different planets that sit around it, are different ways in which we could do that, different elements and roles of the campaign. So introduce the cans to bring colour to teen summer. There's a few different ways we did that. You've got the actual channel that sits around it. It's colour-coded, owned, earned, paid, and shared. And then you've got these what we call satellites, which are these red things. They're the kind of tactics that sit behind the channel. So for example, how do we bring colour to teen summer through point of sale and cinema? We did it through a partnership with Hoyts, where we did all different coloured cups for the first time, and we did different coloured 3D glasses and partnered with different movies coming out at that stage to bring colour to the cinema experience and point of sale. So you can see how you can take that one idea and bring it into all the different channels to try and bring the campaign idea to life. What have we got over here? Discovery of the codes. This is specifically around the codes. You'll see there's not a lot of red here. The red is the paid. Only search, really just paying for search to really capture that latent interest and drive people to that mobile experience. But you know, teens word of mouth, we used influencers, which is a small paid element of that, but mainly earned and owned. And then, you know, social, no paid there either. And then you've got actually unlocking and experiencing that hidden world of content where, you know, this is where we had all the experiences, where we had the interactive out-of-home panels that people could play with, really all the engagement metrics, and then amplifying the colour back out. So the experiences that people had here with influencers, how do we capture content there and use it to drive people to engage again? So what Coke likes to think about, and me as well, is something called no dead ends. It's another one of their connections principles. So always thinking about what happens. What's next, really, is what it is. When you see a digital ad. When you see a pre-roll ad, you know, there's really annoying ads before you're watching a YouTube video. What happens? If someone wants to engage past that, if they click that, where do they go? And then once somebody's on your website, if that's where you send them, where do they go then? You know, making sure that people don't just see an ad and then that's it. You know, if they want to engage, where are we going to send them? How does every single connection point on our plan link to each other? And that's called no dead ends planning. So we make sure we do that. And this is one of the ways. There's whether the arrows are crossed or full or dotted means a lot, but let's not go into the detail for now. So that's the ecosystem. Did it work? Yes, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here. So sold a bunch of cans, 27% above forecast, and it was a pretty aggressive forecast as well. So super happy with that. That was just the cans as well. So, you know, not all the Coca-Cola products, just specific to the coloured cans. Teen consumption, specifically teens, was up by 7%. So after going like that, you know, even just to stem that decline, they would have been really happy with. That's actually what was on the brief. But to actually get it to go like this is a massive achievement, and, you know, something that the clients were just totally wrapped with, and, you know, we were wrapped with as well, because you go to a client, you put your balls on the line and really say, we're going to do a big idea for you here, to see the results started coming in. You know, we're obviously tracking the engagement daily, but we don't see the sales, so it's really good to see that reflected in the sales as well. You're not just doing an idea essentially for an advertising case study's sake. Key brand metrics. So, you know, going back to what we identified at the beginning was a real problem. We did testing pre and post. Energy and sociability, way up. Remember, that was where they were back. And define convention, you know, up 6, 8, and 9 points. So, you know, massive results for them as a brand. You know, the real challenge for Coke, being transparent, is doing this all year long. Because summer's obviously a massive period for them, but once this campaign's over, you know, who's to say that doesn't go back down like this? And that's what we've been working with them on this year. You know, how do we have a lot of brands moving to always on engagement platforms? So, you know, I think Qantas have done a really good job. I don't know if anyone's seen their native content platform called AWOL. It's a partnership with a publishing company called Junkie. I'd encourage you to check it out. It's just doesn't look very Qantasy at all. You go on there, it's a website about travel for young people, telling people about all these different experiences, really, really rich content, always shared through my Facebook feed from other people. You go on there and then it's very, very lightly branded content, Qantas at the bottom, and actually every experience that you read about, you can then click to book immediately. So really nice way of how they're using Always On. Another company that's doing it is ANZ, with a very similar content platform called The Cusp. You know, they identified that young people moving from adolescence into adulthood, on the cusp of adulthood, which is why it's called The Cusp. There's a lot of things you need to know, a lot of things you need to learn, really rich content area. So they developed an entire publication system just around that, delivering content for young people. So, you know, Always On is part of the future. It's something we're talking to Coke about now. But, you know, how do you not just get that spike when you're investing all the money? The good news is, this wasn't just a transaction driver, you know, because it has elements of brand love in it, and we're trying to change things like these, you get a greater residual. You don't just drop off straight away when you're not there, because they've engaged with your campaign, because you've given them value. You know, that brand love stays. And I'd really stress that value. Something I probably should have said earlier is that when you're coming up with these ideas, something I'm always forcing myself is, what is the value exchange? Every time a consumer comes into contact with a piece of your communications, there must be a level of value exchange. You know, at its most basic level, is it entertaining? You know, is it something that they genuinely care about? Is it showing them that we have an understanding of them? You know, a level up, is it something that can give them social currency or cachet? Is it worth them sharing? Or are we actually giving them physical value, like we did here with prizes, games, etc.? Codes. So we forecasted 100,000, which would have been massive, and we got 840,000 almost unlocks, which is pretty exciting for us. You know, considering there's only 1.3 million teens in Australia, that was a massive number. And it was something that we just kept seeing growing. So actually, where you would usually have a big spike at the beginning of the campaign, steadily grew and grew, and after about 4 weeks, I think reached its peak and then kind of stayed up there until people are still playing this crazily. The platform still exists. Our ads aren't around, and neither are the cans. So what they must be doing is going back on YouTube and pausing a YouTube video. There's about 5 a week who are doing it and just playing the games. There's no more prizes, so good on them. But this number's still going up, so great. And 47 million earned impressions on social. Look, impressions, people are always throwing around big numbers with impressions. I have no context or relativity to tell you, except that is a huge number. And it has delivered a heap of value for Coca-Cola. Stuff like this, not just trending in Australia, which would have obviously been great, but trending globally means there was a massive amount of conversation about it here, especially when you consider that Twitter is pretty small in Australia compared to. So if we're trending globally from an Australian Twitter conversation, it's massive news for us. So, from a social point of view, stirred up a lot of conversation. From a brand love point of view, really drove those metrics, but also from a sales point of view.
Do you know what day it was?
What day? Oh, no. I don't know that. It's a very good question. No one's ever asked me that. It would have been in January. So January 2015. No, so, it would have been at the start of January. So they go into February. So it usually starts, depending on how much money we have, at the beginning of December, goes through to February. But sometimes we start earlier, sometimes they go later.
Do you know if it was around Troye Sivan? And
it absolutely was around Troye Sivan. Yeah. It was around Troye Sivan. The experience you could have with him was a live chat actually in a YouTube banner, which is pretty cool for teens. So again, that was another kind of world first thing, like little bits of magic that you sprinkle in the campaign. Getting people to one-on-one chat with him live in a YouTube banner so that all their mates could see it as well. That was the thing that drove the number one. So you can see when you go back and you look at the results, all of the peaks in conversation as well were all around the influencers. So when we went and re-looked at this strategy for what is the summer that's just been, it was a pretty easy story. Do you go, right, the thing that drove the most engagement last year was influencers. Let's make them the entire centre of the campaign and do some even cooler stuff, which not all of it got up, but we did some of it. It's pretty hard with things like this. The interesting stuff about this is it's now going global, which is exciting. So Australia is a real test bed or innovation market for Coke's advertising. Share of Coke came from Australia originally. That's now been done in 75 other countries. This has already been picked up by 15 other countries for next summer. So, it's exciting that we're doing work like this and trying to, inspire the rest of the world to do the same. Hopefully, I have a workshop tomorrow on this coming summer's idea. Hopefully we can think of something as good as this. That's the only problem when you think of ideas like this, constantly benchmarked against a very good campaign. So, got to keep it going. But that's all I have to say. So unless you've got any questions, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Do you have a question? Did you have a question up the back? No? Oh, no, sorry. I thought you put your hand up. Hit me.
How many influencers did you use? How many?
Right, so there was 2 types of influencers for this campaign. We used 3, which were the experience kind of prize influencers. And they're the ones that talked about the codes. Specifically to begin with, and then we also used influencers at the very beginning of the campaign before we talked about the codes, just as a seeding phase, so we called it phase 0. So before any advertising went out, I think it was 15, we got 15 kind of lower level influencers, didn't pay them anything, just created these really nice packs of the world first colourful Cokes.
Categorise them. So
Yeah, so how did we find them, essentially?
how did you categorise? So who were the most influential? Who were?
Yeah, cool. So we did it in passion verticals. So I think we did, from memory, fashion, music, sport. There's one more that I can't think of. But we use an actual social agency to do that. So as part of our company, we have what's called a special business unit, which specialises in social media and influencer outreach and engagement. So, they've got tools, but really it's done on users. So how many people follow or like you, and what's your average engagement rate is how we look at that. A lot of companies will give you fancy numbers for influencer. Oh, here's our influencer influence score. But essentially it comes down to how many followers do they have, what is the size of their audience, and how actively are they engaged. Working with influencers is a really interesting it's a really interesting experience.
Because I would consider Troy as a celebrity.
He is now. At this point, it was just before he was about to blow. So now he's got, you know, 40 countries, his #1 single. This was just before he released any music, so it was actually a really good time for us. So he would be a celebrity now, although we did use him for this last campaign. We used him as a kind of a lower level, but yeah, he would be considered a celebrity now. But at that point, he'd made it big through. He was discovered through YouTube, so he still had a lot of credibility in that space. And you know, they've got their own brand to protect, and particularly, you know, going back to the Coca Cola conversation, you know, they want to work with us in their own way. A lot of them are really, really worried about transparency. So just being really open that this is an ad, but also not wanting to do ads. You know, they want to deliver authentic content that helps entertain their audience, because if they don't do that, then they lose their channels. They're very, very protective of their brand and how we work with them. And a lot of the time we've got to hand over control. So, you know, you pay the money, you give them the brief, and then they come back with something that you don't like. And we actually had that on this campaign. We couldn't use one of the guys' pieces of content because, you know, his brand wasn't our brand, essentially. You know, he was kind of swearing and doing stuff that we didn't agree with. But, you know, you've paid them, and you just have to make the decision, you know what, that's not for this campaign. We won't use them again in the future, and you earmark that and you learn why. And as long as you learn from it, Coke are pretty cool with that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a really interesting space. And you know, I think it's really interesting getting influencers to talk to each other is something that I'm always talking to Coke about. So, you know, a lot of these people have a small amount of shared audiences, but they also have unique audience. So when you're trying to build audience on top of people and get incremental reach, right? It's very easy to get a base layer of reach, but getting that few extra percentage points of that target audience can often become hard, and cross-pollinating influencer audiences is one way to do that. So, you know, getting Troy to talk to a Tiger Lily's audience, getting them to do something is actually cross-pollinating that audience, and you're showing, oh, Coke understands me because they're getting two of my favorite people together. Oh, now I found another one thanks to Coke, stuff like that. So, sorry, I talk about influencers all day.
Say a bit about, I guess, maybe it's like the process of coming up with the ideas, like once you've kind of got the research to actually kind of going, all right, this is what
Yeah. So there's a number of different ways, and I think one of the complexities is working with other agencies. So, you know, we've got our own process, but then we work with Ogilvy, who's got their own process. How do we work together? Everyone's trying to own the idea. I think Coke do a really good job. I do believe it is the client's responsibility to foster collaboration. So, you know, they mandate to us, you guys work together. And if there is any talk of, you know, egos or someone trying to do something behind the other one's back, they stomp that immediately. So they do a really good job of us working together. I think from this point of view, you know, you get the insights. Once they come through, you know, you might run that workshop yourself. I think for this, we did them ourselves, so we had the insights immediately. Often you'll come up with, and we did with the colour here, we had a hypothesis, right? So we said, look, we want to use colour. Let's go and prove that teens love colour. We did that pretty well. So that was for the colour idea. We actually came up with that idea prior to doing the research. For the other one, so we had a bunch of insights around the teen audience, the way they consume media, the technologies that they consume, you know, the influencers, the world within a world stuff was one of the insights that we had. And we actually just ran a workshop. So we ran it with us, our agency, the clients, Google. They helped provide a lot of the insights. So, you know, they came in for the day, and the creative agency, and we ran a big work session where, you know, it's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, but that's another big part of my job, is facilitating these work sessions, getting people energized around a certain idea, or even coming up with that idea. So, you know, take people through the insights, you split them up into groups.
So how many people would be involved in something?
Oh, in that session there was about 20. You know, that's the other thing is, there's two different reasons you run a work session like that. One is to get people feeling like they're on the journey and buying into it, right? And usually that's where you invite the key stakeholders and it's more about them just being there and talking about the idea and feeling like they're immersing themselves in the problem than actually coming up with an idea. I find if you're really trying to come up with an idea, like a proper ideation session, you want fewer people that work better together. You know, I like to keep it around 5 or 6, and then you do it as a group. But again, you know, something I'm always stressing to our staff is that ideation does not come at the beginning. I think that's a common misconception. That comes in the middle. You have to do a lot of work to get to a brainstorm. People walk into brainstorms and they're like, cool, so we've got this brief, like, go. It's like you're sitting there going, I have no concept of what we're trying to do here. You have to do a whole bunch of research, you know, gathering stimulus. Really, the whole problem identification thing, identifying the problem behind the problem, has to happen before you're in a brainstorm, because you can't be asking other people to figure that out for you, particularly as someone in my job, a communication strategist. You have to identify the problem, and then you help them ideate around how to solve that problem. And then you're focusing their thinking, and that's how you get the best ideas out of those people. 2 things: focus their thinking and give them really good stimulus. And that's what we had for this. You know, that stimulus can just be pictures, other campaigns that people have done for this audience, other similar brands who have had similar problems, or it can be insights. Hey, we've done this research, we know this is where the idea needs to land, how do we bring this insight to life?
How detailed is the brief from Coke? Is it just that we've got this problem where sales is going, or do they come to you with something a little bit more?
There's very detailed long briefs. So, you know, Coke are really good at briefing. I think a lot of clients, you know, they call you, or they always make sure they do face-to-face briefings. For summer, it's usually, you know, quite a big fanfare. They do an hour-long presentation to you around all the business challenges, and then, you know, their expectations for the campaign. I think it's really important to align on expectations before you start. And then, you know, it's usually accompanied by a 6-page Word doc that has what they consider the business problem to be. You know, so that's the other thing. Clients will come to you with what they think the business problem is. And a lot of people go, cool, that's what we're doing. I think something that we did here was go, well, no, we're going to do our own research. You know, Coke's never going to come to us and say, our ubiquity is our biggest problem. So, you know, identifying that was a big step. And I think you've got to check in at that point with the client, because if you go running off doing a whole bunch of work and putting a lot of hours behind a certain problem and they fundamentally don't agree with it, it's a big issue. So always, you know, regular check-ins are important. What else do they give you? They give you the target audience. Something else which we always interrogate. You know, clients don't always get it right who they should be targeting. And, you know, sometimes they'll say to us now, they have a habit of saying to us, oh, you know, we want to target MGBs and teens, for example. They're completely different audiences. You know, they like doing one thing for one and another thing for another is just going to split your budget in half immediately. You know, really forcing them to be single-minded and focused is something that we have to do a lot. So they'll tell you about the target audience. They'll give you a little bit of insight around them, but not a lot. You know, that's really where we add a lot of value. They bring in the briefing a lot of value around the brand. So what's the brand vision? What's the architecture for the brand? You know, who is the brand? What's our heritage? What do we know are our problems? How do people see us? They'll provide a lot of that. And also category insight. So category insight's really important. You know, one of my other clients is Virgin Mobile, and we're doing a whole bunch of category stuff. For Coke, category insight's less important because we are the category, and Coca Cola owns all the other players in the category pretty much as well. So it's more about portfolio management at that point rather than how do we compete with Fanta. You know, it's a little bit different. But, you know, cultural insights are a massive part of it as well. And obviously, you know, with the climate, the health climate the way it is, that's, you know, forming a bigger part of each brief. But the briefs are pretty detailed. They do a really good job. You know, there's other things like, you know, budgets, timings are really important, making sure that you give people enough time to create a campaign like this. You know, this doesn't happen in a month or two. This is a 6 month, you know, we got briefed in January for summer of this year. So, you know, we get a lot of time and constant check-ins with everyone. So the briefing, I say, is, you know, it's shit in, shit out is the rule. If you get a good face-to-face briefing, everyone knows what they're doing, you'll come back with a better idea 10 out of 10 times.
How big's your... Oh, sorry.
Just from the cost point of view, comparison to TV campaigns. Well, what's your call?
Yeah, I mean, so you have a pool of budget, right? You have an amount of money which you're allowed to spend, and usually that's final, unless money comes in later in the campaign or something because it's end of financial year or something like that. You have a finite amount of money. So if you're choosing to spend it on TV, particularly when you're after a youth audience, and sometimes they don't care. They'll say we have to have TV. You're just sinking a lot of money into that channel. Not only that, the production of a TV ad is super expensive.
But give you, from your experience within TV campaigns and online campaigns, did you feel there's a lower budget spent on online campaigns?
Well, I mean, so you need to find a common metric, and CPMs, so cost per 1,000, is usually the metric that people use. Look, I'm probably the wrong person to ask about this because I fundamentally think that rating systems are flawed. In Australia, we have one of the most sophisticated survey systems in the world for TV. So I think we have a panel of 5,000 to 10,000 people that every day tell you what shows they watched, and then we base the rest of our TV ratings off that. 5,000 to 10,000 people for 24 million people. That sounds crazy to me. That is 100 times better than it is in America. I think they have the same amount of people for America where they have 335 million people. So, who's watching TV at the moment? I watch a bit of TV. I don't watch any ads. I fast forward all my ads. And when I'm not, I'm going to the toilet or making a cup of tea or, getting a beer usually. So, but the same thing happens with online ads, right? So if I wasn't going to put that money there, if we're given a video asset, there's a few places we can put it. If you're saying TV is too expensive, then you can put it in online, but you have skippable ads, you have ad blockers. So when it comes to accountability, online feels a lot more accountable, and absolutely you get more bang for your buck. But what you really want to be doing is trying to balance those two. So, can you do TV in a really selective fashion, not just kind of spray and pray? Can you cherry pick, 5 to 10 key shows that you want to buy? You do that because you know your audience is going to be there, and then you top up the rest of your audience with online. That's going back to incremental reach, and we do a lot of stuff around the point of diminishing returns, right? So if you want to get the first 30% of your audience, if you've got a reach goal, let's say you want to reach all people in Australia, you could probably, if you want to reach them very quickly, TV is the fastest way to do it. Absolutely, because there's a massive audience there. But you get to a point of diminishing returns very quickly on TV where it's the same people you are reaching. So you're increasing your frequency of hitting those people, but you're not increasing your reach. So if you complement that with an online video buy, you are reaching a whole new group of people and you're getting that incremental reach at a far more cost-effective way. So it's about a combination of channels, not one over the other. That's what I would say.
So just on that though, you said there was 47,000
earned social media impressions.
So
yes.
Did you work out uniques on that?
I don't know if we did work out the uniques on that. Probably just because it sounds better to say that, if I'm being honest. Our ROI team would have done that, but I didn't work out the uniques. I mean, we would have the uniques. Actually, I wrote the case study, yeah. So the reporting for this says that we reached 99% of teens in Australia with this campaign. So that was something that we could go back to the client and say, we're going to promise to do this. And that made them feel a lot better about not doing TV. So if we say to them, we are going to hit 99% of teens in Australia at least once with this campaign, then they're happy with that. Out of home does a great job of that because it's a huge reach driver. It's everywhere. Teens are massive consumers of out of home. I mean, everybody is, because if you go outside, you consume out of home. But teens particularly, stuff like bus and transit media is really effective because they're traveling to and from school and whatnot. So it's, I think, teens and out of home is an easy solve, but it's different on a case-by-case basis. And we always look at the different mix of those media channels as opposed to just one over the other, is what I would say.
What was the criteria for the colors?
Sorry, for the codes?
The colours.
To pick the colours? We had our recommendation. We did it based on some psychographic study that said these colours equal happiness. We were trying to tie the colours really closely to happiness because we knew Coke was all about happiness. Little did we know Coke were making a move in the background to move away from happiness. So they ended up just going for colours that looked good and that they could actually do quite cost effectively in the dyeing process. Yep, and we actually learnt a lot about ink throughout that process. The campaign that we did this year was all about ink. It used thermochromic ink, which changes when the temperature changes, to light up the cans, which is a whole nother expensive ink campaign. But essentially they just chose them on the cost effectiveness and the colours that were most effective on the shelf. That combination of colours. I think if you ever saw these on shelf compared to what the shelf usually looks like, it's very effective, particularly in grocery. So they saw, the other side of all of this is that as a business, as a marketer, we have to think about all the stakeholders. So for Coke, stakeholders like Coles and Woolworths, which they refer to as customers, are hugely important. Back to the TV conversation. Most of the times when we put TV on the plan, it's just so they can tell their customers that they've got TV on the plan, because the customers aren't as savvy as a marketer as we might be. They don't have me going in there and explaining it to them. They just have a conversation with a sales guy and they say, do you have TV? Yes. Awesome, we'll stock you. We'll give you this. We'll give you extra this. So a lot of the times we're planning not necessarily for our audience, but for the customers, so that we can get really big in-store presence, which is, just another element to consider.
Do you think this is the end of TV for Coke? Depending on...
No, yeah. So I would, what? The reality of that conversation is that Coke is going through a massive change, and we are heavily involved with global now. So global, Coca-Cola on a global level, you can read about it. I don't think I'm telling you anything new, but they have hired a new global CMO, and he is a little bit old school when it comes to connections thinking and media thinking. So, for the most recent campaign, it's called Taste the Feeling. We were given 16 pieces of video which were expected to be run on TV. So no is the answer. They're trying to go back to big thematic TV ads. Now, because we're in Australia, we have permission to take those and go, oh, thanks. Yeah, no, probably not going to do that. We'll put them online and we'll reach people that way. It's not, they're still going to want some TV because MGB is getting more and more important for Coke. Now that they've realised that 70% of consumption comes from those guys, you will still be seeing TV ads, but it'll be more selective, far more selective. It won't just be a big reach buy that they do all year, but 100% all of our ideas are now starting with social. It's if an idea doesn't have social at the heart. So I talked you through some of the connections principles that they run their marketing by. One was OESP, so putting own first. The other was no dead ends. The third was 70-20-10, and the fourth is social at the heart. And they judge every single idea that we present to them on those four things. I have to have a slide at the end of my presentations that shows how I've addressed those four things in my presentation. So it's social is it's here, it's not the future, it's right now, and every idea we're thinking of for every client has to be driven from social, because that's where the ROI is. If you can get people to spread your message for you, why wouldn't you?
Thinking about social, did you have any negative feed from the teens' parents?
From the teens' parents? No. I mean, we get plenty. We get plenty, not for this campaign specifically. When we try and there's a lot of responsible marketing to children education that we get, not putting stuff outside schools, etc. This was you have to have a mobile phone to engage with it. So, that kind of, and also usually, and we got them to sign in through Facebook. Facebook, you have to be 14. So from that point of view, we mitigate some risk on our side. But, we get heaps of complaints on our social media pages, just generally speaking. Biggest complaints around kind of environmental impact. So PET bottles, and particularly at the moment, the container deposit legislation that's happening in New South Wales. So the government is thinking about putting in a 5 cents for recycling system like they have in South Australia. So that we're getting a lot of talk around that. There's been a huge push from Greenpeace kind of attacking Coca-Cola. I went and presented somewhere last week, and I was like told if there's a riot or if Greenpeace come and have a stunt, just stay calm and go to security, which I thought was wild. But yeah, they get that, and they get the health stuff, but and also the research. So being transparent about their research is something they committed to, I think, a year ago. I think that came out last week. So a bit of negativity around that. But generally, people, I think within Coca-Cola, it's a big magnifying glass. And I think, they're really, really concerned about it. How do we try and be more responsible? How do we try and address some of these issues? But in reality, like when you go out there, people don't care as much as we think they care. That's just a common, for every client that I've ever worked on, people think that people care about their brands. People don't care. People care about their lives. Sometimes they want to drink Coca-Cola, sometimes they don't. And our job is, just to try and get people to maybe drink one more a month. I think that's the other big thing is, you would have seen in the past kind of 100 years Coca-Cola trying to tell people that it was an everyday drink. And that is not something that they'll be doing moving forward. It's definitely about moderation. To the point where we're trying to get them to print on the cans to drink less and develop an actual, almost a standard drinking size, similar to what they do in the alcohol category. For sugar consumption. So, it's slow moving, but there's massive interest in it, and they're, investing in heaps of kind of consumer research to try and get that through the business at the moment. So hopefully that comes soon.
Especially when you've got legislation like that
in the UK. Exactly. Why wouldn't you get ahead of it? Is what we're saying to them. They're supposed to be this leader of the category. Why not just step in front of it and say, but,
Especially with energy drinks, also the maximum recommended value.
Yep. Exactly, and they own a couple of them as well. So, I think about soft drinks all the time. It's tough. You think about chocolate. People love chocolate. No one complains about chocolate. I eat so much chocolate. If you look at the discretionary diet, which is essentially the stuff we don't have to eat that we do eat, the biggest contributor to sugar is chocolate. It's Coke. Soft drink is number 7, actually. Wine is a big contributor, but these are just not things that people perceive to be as evil, because genuinely I think it's because Coke is compared to water, chocolate is not compared to salad. So, it's just it's not how it's framed in people's minds. And unfortunately, because it has been marketed as an everyday drink for everyone all the time, over the past 100 years before we kind of knew these things, it's a problem that is very hard to reverse. And also the fact it's everywhere makes that difficult as well. But, I can tell you right now, they're definitely aware of it, because they're trying to do a lot of things to change it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
All right, well, thank you very much, Sam. It's been fantastic having you.
Thanks, guys.